Like they're not going full
Yeah,
gas then, or
exactly, not full gas. So I'd shoot for like 110 to 115% of FTP, but maybe do like 3 blocks of 10 or something, which would be 20 minutes in the zone, like 10 times 40, 400,
yeah.
1200. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool. Keep going. Sorry. That because
So,
someone will email me that and they'll be like, can you reach out to Nate and get the exact example? So I just start to ask them right now.
yeah. And I mean, that's something where like I'd maybe move it up over time or something. But, if we wanted to do some 40/20s in the winter because we thought like, okay, we want to build your base, but it also almost feels like you need to improve your VO2 max. And like if we want to improve a lot, we probably need to stretch that out over a longer period of time. Like, I don't really think the answer is like say you would do 8 weeks of base work, then start doing a bit more intensity. And you say, oh, if we really think you need to improve your VO2 max, and you say, we're going to have this 4 weeks where we're going to do intensity. I don't really feel like I've found the answer to that is instead of doing one VO2 max workout a week, you do three. I think then you almost just flood the engine and you don't necessarily have time to respond. I think a more realistic approach is maybe stretch out the duration over which you expose to the stimulus,
Hmm.
but at the same time, you want to still be cognizant, I think, of what the overarching goal for that sort of training period is. Like,
Hmm.
if you want to build a base, then you need to build a base. And in general, like the work needs to be low intensity and higher volume and, all the things that sort of we've always correlated to base training. I think you can have some exposure to VO2 work in that period without like ruining your chance at building a base. But then it needs to be really controlled. The frequency of it needs to be maybe somewhat low, that kind of thing. And also like the rider's in a little bit not good shape compared to their best. So also like to be productive, the workouts need to be approachable. So yeah, I think these sort of like 40/20s in a period like that can be like a great way to like build up fitness and just rather than expanding power, you try and expand time and zone. So it's like rather than it's 3 times 5 minute blocks of 40/20s, best you can do, it's 3 times 5 minute blocks of 40/20s. That's something you can definitely do. And then you're doing 3 times 10 and 3 times 12. And you've built up by the time you get to February, you've built up a pretty decent amount of exposure to that zone. And like maybe you haven't done that like all out for 5 minutes or something, but it's also you're comfortable pedaling that power. It's quite repeatable, and I think you've gotten some pretty big max aerobic stimulus from that.
So to clarify, so you brought up base work. So you would have them maybe do this like once a week during base. And then and then when you're talking about extending the time beyond the go 3 to 10, 3 to 12, whatever, then they're maybe doing more sessions during the week as they get in like before the races, maybe a month before or so.
Yeah, I've gone that direction before for sure. It's not something I'm always doing. I think a lot depends. That's something where I definitely think there's a difference between the pro riders and the amateur riders because the pro riders in a normal healthy season, they race so much, 70 to 80 days of racing a year. So it's like they're not often in the position where we're saying like, oh, it feels like you're missing exposure to intensity and we need to like catch a little bit of that up. Um,
Mhm.
but like some experiences where I have used it and felt like it worked was like people coming off of injuries where it's like they didn't get the normal race season. And you're like, well, you're on track for a normal race season next year. So like, trying to simulate a race season over the winter just so you didn't not have a race season isn't the right thing to do. Like we still want to follow this maybe, or I still want to follow this maybe more or less linear path of building a base in a traditional way and then adding a bit more intensity as we get closer to the season. But you don't really have that exposure to this consistent high volume of intensity from racing over the previous 12 months as you've had in past years. So we want to make up for a little bit of that, but make up for it in a way that's realistic, not going to like break down building a base and like is going to be achievable, and not leave you like mentally in a puddle.
You bring up a really good point about the quantity of racing because, and not saying this negatively, I think the coaches at your level, that are so engulfed in the world tour lifestyle that when they're tweeting things out sometimes that all of us amateurs are reading, it's like they forget how much these guys and girls race and how much intense, how hard these races are. That I'm like, wait a minute, we're amateurs that are racing maybe every other weekend. Like, we're not getting these 4-day stage races, and we're not like, so it's just sometimes so hard to tease out like the best practices, because I think that even the people preaching it, they're not trying to be misleading. They just sort of forget like we're in totally different worlds of types of scheduling of our events